you remember the hype from the Star Wars Eclipse trailer back in 2021? I remember it like it was yesterday. The jaw-dropping visuals, the High Republic setting. And as of right now, the trailer has about 22 million views. And after that trailer dropped, we got pretty much nothing. And for years after the trailer dropped, the only real updates were kind of just whispers about the troubled development over at Quantic Dream and the delays, which left fans wondering if this ambitious and gorgeous looking game was just turning into a failed promise. Well, that silence has finally been broken when Quantic Dream put out a statement on the game's development and future projects that they're working on. And it directly talks about the timeline that everyone has been, waiting to hear about. And today we're going to be covering the big development update that they dropped recently. And I'll also be diving into the world of the High Republic era and discuss everything that we know about this mysterious new adventure. Okay, so let's go ahead and get into the news you're here for. After months of radio silence that had myself, and I'm sure many of you guys, fearing the worst was about to happen, aka another failed promise and the game got canceled, well, Quantic Dream's founder David Cage published a blog post titled Writing a New Chapter. Now, in that blog post, he finally addressed the big elephant in the room, and that was Star Wars Eclipse. David Cage confirmed that the development of Star Wars Eclipse continues, and he said that we are eager to share more with you in the future. Now, I know it is a really small statement, but let's be real, like, it's been so long since we've heard about Quantic Dream's next game. So, I mean, really, any news about Star Wars Eclipse is pretty significant. Now, this is a direct confirmation from the head of the studio that the game hasn't been canceled and is still an active project for them, which is pretty awesome. And it was a big relief for me because as soon as I saw that trailer, I was like, I cannot wait to play this game. I absolutely love Star Wars and I love what Quantic Dream has done in the past. So the confirmation that the project is still a go is pretty great. Now, in a separate LinkedIn post from earlier this year, the CEO of Quantic Dream also assured everyone that the projects that they're working on are progressing at quote unquote full pace. But this is where we get the interesting twist. The blog post also announced that Quantic Dream is expanding in a big way. They've been on a hiring push, opened up a new studio in Montreal, and they are officially no longer a single project studio, which is like kind of crazy because the last game that they announced, it was in 2021, and now they're just saying like, hey, by the way, we're also working on multiple games at once, including a competitive multiplayer experience that David Cage described as a very different experience from what they've done so far. So what does this actually mean for Star Wars Eclipse? Well, on one hand, the studio's expansion is a positive sign that they have the resources to tackle multiple projects. But on the other hand, splitting the focus between a massive Star Wars RPG or whatever game they're developing and a brand new multiplayer game could stretch their team thin. That is, if they start pulling resources from Star Wars Eclipse, which I don't think they are. Like, that would be incredibly disastrous for them. But I would say the key takeaway is this: Quantic Dream has officially broken their silence and told us that the game is still coming out, which I think that's pretty positive. Like, that's some great news to hear. Now, it's not a gameplay trailer that we were all hoping for or just like any other sign of life, but the fact that we have full confirmation that the thing is still going is at least a positive. So now that we know the game is still alive and kicking, let's get into what we know so far, starting with the amazing setting. Star Wars Eclipse is set in the High Republic era, a period roughly 200 years before the events of the Phantom Menace, which this is considered a golden age of the Jedi and the Galactic Republic. The Jedi are at their absolute height of their power, seen not as generals in war, but as true keepers of the peace and heroes across the galaxy. The Jedi in this era are often more flexible in their views of the Force, with them having various different roles like investigators and others who operate with more freedom from the Jedi Council. Now, the Republic itself is enjoying a period of peacetime and is focused on expanding into the Outer Rim, building installations like the Starlight Beacon to bring new systems into the fold. Now, Star Wars Eclipse allegedly takes us to an uncharted region of the Outer Rim, a place filled with political tension, opportunities, and of course, dangers. Now, this setting is obviously key because it gives Quantic Dream mostly a blank canvas that they can do what they want to do without, messing with any of the canon. For instance, they can introduce a brand new species, planets, characters, without being tied down to the Skywalker saga. And the reveal trailer showed us just that. We have familiar faces in the trailer alongside teases of new worlds and cultures that we get to see for the first time, which I think is going to be a nice change of pace. Like, don't get me me wrong, I love the Skywalker saga. I love the region of the galaxy that we're in, but man, am I excited to see something brand new. So what kind of story is this game going to be? Well, it is Quantic Dream we're talking about, so they basically confirmed that Star Wars Eclipse will feature a deeply branching narrative with multiple playable characters. Again, this is their signature style. If you've played games like Detroit Become Human or Heavy Rain, your choices in this new game will have real consequences. And it's also been said that any of the playable characters can die without the story coming to an end. Again, I absolutely love this format and I cannot wait to see what they do with a Star Wars twist. If you've ever played a Quantic Dream game, you know how high stakes the narrative will be. There's going to be parts where the decisions you make truly matter, and I can't wait for that. That is if they nail the landing, obviously. Now, the official details for Star Wars Eclipse are pretty much non-existent. However, there have been several leaks, notably one from VGC via, I believe it was Sacred Symbols podcast, where there was some insider information. So take this with a grain of salt, but some news outlets have claimed to have verified the information that points to the main protagonist being a woman named Sarah. She reportedly belongs to a new humanoid species called the Zaran, or the Zaran. I'm not really sure the pronunciation, but they describe it as a race that's focused on political and military aggression. And the story kicks off with Sarah's marriage into a peaceful faction, which creates a central conflict that ignites the entirety of the Outer Rim. Now, other leaks have come from alleged concept art and casting sheets that showed off potential designs for the Rhodians and the Gungans, and a new race called the Zinzian. I believe that's the pronunciation as well. Sorry about that. Other leaks have claimed that there's possible character names like Travis and Jot Raz Kamzek that have been floated, but all of this points to a different type of story for Star Wars, all about political intrigue, cultures that are clashing, and a new kind of threat that isn't just your typical Sith Lord conflict, which I really like. Which honestly, some of my favorite aspects of Star Wars are the political intrigue aspect of things. As much as I love the conflict between the Sith and the Jedi, the political tension is some of my favorite Star Wars, and I'm really glad that Quantic Dream is leaning into that aspect, especially in the High Republic. It is such an untapped age for them to be covering. This right here is where things start to get interesting though. Quantic Dream is known for one thing, and that is their interactive dramas. The type of games where you just kind of sit back and you watch all the craziness unfold. They're obviously narrative heavy games driven by choices and quick time events, but Star Wars Eclipse might be a bit different, as this game is being dubbed an action adventure game, which marks a pretty big shift for the studio. They promised a game that blends their signature cinematic storytelling, but with something that has more traditional action gameplay. So what could that game look like? Well, according to a statement from the CEO of Quantic Dream from back in the day, they stated that Star Wars Eclipse will be a different game than anything that they've done before, and the fact that it's also an action adventure game tells me that we can expect things like lightsaber combat, blaster fights, and vehicle sequences. Now, it's hard to determine what kind of scope that's going to be. Obviously, they do narrative heavy games, but it seems like this game will be action adventure according to what they've told us. So if that's the case, could we see something that's almost like, you know, Jedi Fallen Order or Jedi Survivor in terms of the gameplay, or will it be a mix between Detroit Become Human and Jedi Fallen Order and Survivor? I think if anything, it will be much more cinematic. It will likely be third person as well. But again, until we actually see full official gameplay, everything else is speculation. But the fact that they do call it an action adventure game is something to be very curious about. Honestly, at this point, just make a Quantic Dream type game that's like Mass Effect, but Star Wars. So where does this leave us with the release of Star Wars Eclipse? Well, we know that it's very much alive, but it remains a huge game, and it's an ambitious game with a ton of questions. The fact that we did get an update from Quantic Dream recently confirms that the development is at least ongoing and it's not been canceled, but I am a bit concerned that the studio is expanding to a multi-project future, especially after the turbulent past that Quantic Dream has, you know, undergone. The studio has had quite a bit of drama. There's a bunch of allegations that I don't really want to litigate here, but there's been some pretty sus stuff in the past. But regardless, we do know that the game is happening. Hopefully it still does. And if not, then it'll just be one of those, I guess you can say, Quantic Dreams of a Star Wars game that is truly special, that actually releases. Yes, I'm talking about you, RIP Star Wars 1313. But that's going to wrap it up with this video, guys. Let me know what your thoughts are down in the comment section. Are you excited for Star Wars Eclipse? Will it go down the path of Star Wars 1313? Hit the like button if you enjoyed, and until next time, this has been Wes, and I will talk to you guys in the next video.